He doesn't need
Think
to be
about it.
on the board or on the grand chessboard,
It's
if
his
you
board,
will.
yeah. Yeah, it's their board.
This, I just thought of something, the doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. So as we've looked through all these things and perhaps we were able to kind of shake free of the sort of government controls and the media controls and the religion controls, that there are many, 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 many people who question the events and the media descriptions and the myths that surround 9/11. How,
Well,
I suppose, what makes me do this to this day? I would admit on some level I was probably traumatized by the events of 9/11 and need some kind of closure or exposure in a way to try and make sense of all this.
well, it's not because it's not just about that day. You're trying to make sense of the world outside of these walls and these doors in whatever room we're in right now. It's like what goes on out there didn't just happen in one day, and it didn't just go away in one day. And there's a larger set of dynamics going on. And yeah, it can be overwhelming. And we definitely anyone who saw 9/11 either on TV or in person has some form of PTSD. You just saw a large number of life get snuffed out. You saw people committing suicide, jumping out of the windows to save themselves from the flames. You see all this going on. You see how tragic it is. You see all the victims' families. They're pulling at your heartstrings through the media. The media is pulling your heartstrings by purposely presenting these things in overly dramatic ways when they know that they're not doing a real investigation, right? So I just disapprove of the hypocrisy, and I think that, the victims' families deserve more than that. I think the people who have looked into 9/11 truth to any degree, looking into something other than the official story being 9/11 truth, I think, yeah, everyone has been traumatized because PTSD is a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. So what you have is 300 million people who are normal, everyday people for the most part, going through a traumatic situation on the news being shown to them thousands of times, so much that you can't even see it anymore. You can't even see it. And so, for someone who researches to take the videos apart frame by frame and look at what they actually showed us that day, and then to understand the levels of calibration and collaboration that they can do with the video systems that they hold and the things that they can make happen with TV and controlling people like puppets through television and music, in their newscasts and whatnot. Why is there music in news? I ask you that. Why do they have music in their newscasts? Because they're controlling your emotions the whole time. They are manipulating your emotions. And so I say I only listen to media from people I know and respect because I know that they're not going to mistreat me. I know that their intentions are true. And I know it's not going to be anything toxic for me or my spirit. Right?
Well, because just as you mentioned that, I was like, well, I always put music under my news, but
no, dude, I love that, by the way.
It was something I learned.
It
was something I learned.
I might interrupt you.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
If I might interrupt you for a second, I think the music in your podcast is fantastic because you take information that otherwise couldn't be consumed by people. Because that's what I thought. It's like I started doing it in my podcast a bit because I was like, look, it's like knowing that the human body needs minerals and vitamins and going out and scraping these up out of the ground and be like, here's some vitamin C, here's some calcium, eat this. You're like, no, I can't eat that. Those are
Yuck.
rocks. Right? And we need to create food. We need to create nutritious media, the sustenance that comes in through our eyes and our ears and through our hearts. Because this is the only way we can start to heal ourselves from this post-traumatic stress disorder of the war on terror that keeps on going and we have no idea who we're chasing. I mean, it's like Emmanuel Goldstein from 1984, but I digress. The point would be that, it's up to us. We can either feel like the world's gone crazy or we could say the world, yeah, it was crazy until I started paying attention to it, and now we're making more sense out of it every day. And sooner than later, we're going to understand the user manual for, planet Earth and know how to deal with these other entities that prey on us for their living because they're not creative enough to make a living without preying on you and stealing your energy unwittingly. I just don't think it's fair.
Well, and I think
so that's why we do it, what we do. And that's why you put the music under there so people can get the vibe and they can take in the information and they can start to feel it and they can start to make it part of their bodies. And that makes change in their actions because just the littlest thought can make the biggest change, right? And so I think it's a beautiful thing, and I've wanted to say that for a long time, that one of the favorite things in your podcast, aside from the awesome information and the crisp delivery, is that, that you keep the mood positive underneath, and you keep pushing people forward and saying, look, it's hard, but we got some music, so let's roll.
I think I definitely chalk that up and thank it to, more of my background in radio and theater. I did a lot of...
You have a degree in media production, right?
I do. I had a lot of time spent at WSHC, a non-commercial 950-watt FM radio station at my college at Shepherd University in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. And I did so much airtime there that I realized at some point, it was like, oh, when I'm on the air, perhaps thinking of the next thing I'm going to say, if I have a little music bed underneath me, I don't get nervous and feel like, oh, there's dead air, I have to fill it with going, yeah, And it sort of was a nice little glue and a nice thing that I could glide along, and it could help pace me out and not go too slow or not go too fast. The other thing is that I minored in theater with an emphasis on sound design. So doing sound effects and music in the in-between parts when you do a blackout and a scene change, I think I took a lot of that experience and knowledge and flipped it around a little bit and said, well, okay, we're not going to be playing, punk rock 7 inches. We're going to be talking about what's really going down in the world. Perhaps we'll open the show with a punk rock 7-inch, but it's, again, there to make, the information accessible.
Well, totally, man, because if it's not accessible, then, what are we doing out there? That's why I'm so particular about, I like to be prepared and make sure that I'm respecting someone else's time who's taking the time to give me the benefit of the doubt, to listen to the words I have to say, and to see whether I'm trying to empower them or if I'm trying to be sly and take something from them. You know what I'm saying? And so when I bring it back, it's like, just to communicate that which I had experienced as a whistleblower, you have to learn how to create media. You have to learn, I had to learn cinematography, because if you don't have at least as good a production value as the infomercial that people see in the middle of the night, then they're not going to listen to you. Even though you have information that's 100 times more pertinent to their survival than the infomercial, they will watch the infomercial and zone out and just go with the program because it's professionally produced. It has quality sound. It has good camera angles and good lighting, and it has a format that they're comfortable with. And so what I tried to do with 9/11 Synchronicity was purposely break all the formats, break everything that, culture had said. And I said, I want to see who can follow me down this path, because the people who come out on the other end of this podcast are going to be educated, they're going to be active, they're going to have taken the initiative. And I work with a lot of the people that have made it through that whole podcast, because it's more of a homing beacon for people who are kind of tuned in and have long attention spans, because if you can make it through a 14-hour podcast, then you have the attention span necessary to look at some of these larger pieces of information that make everything else make sense. I mean, there's keystone pieces of information out there, but it's no good to people who can't turn that key, with their mind. You got to understand these things, and there's something for doing things with the information as opposed to just hearing it on the radio in between Berkey water cooler ads. Just me.
Absolutely. I think,
or it's like I would mention that it's like every time in the past that I had done an interview on one of the stations that does commercials every couple minutes, I felt like they were getting me on there just to get people to listen to the commercials. And it's like, before I had time to make a coherent thought, oh, again, we got to listen to this fear-mongering commercial. And I'm like, when we designed Tragedy and Hope, we said, look, what's the critical flaw to all this corporate media? And well, it's the advertisers and the profits that come from that. It's like, all right, so let's take those out of the equation. What do we have now? Oh, now we have something that actually performs as designed and serves its purpose. And then that's something that, is good, because you can put out the video, the audio, and the text that people need, because it's not just about reading a book. So you got to read this book, and then you got to watch The Hidden Agenda with Norman Dodd, which is a DVD, and then you got to read this other text and watch this other video from YouTube, and this helps you fill in the blanks, because there's no official history on this yet. There's only the pieces they've left us behind and the pieces we can fill in to get this picture, and So
picking up the loose change, if you will. Sorry, I had to say it.
Following the money, picking up the loose change. That's what it's all about. Those people have so much money. The people who are doing this have so much money that they left loose change all over the place. And if you just follow the money, it leads you back to these corporations, back to these intelligence agencies that are created by these international bankers who have been ruling over us unwittingly, for us, unwittingly for 100 years at least, but, in the current form, 100 years. So none of this is new. When I showed some of this information, like The Hidden Agenda, Norman Dodd, to my dad, I said, look, here's what's going on. These foundations had been influencing our education system. This explains why people don't realize and people think they know, and the history they've learned is not necessarily accurate. And he said he understood that it had been going on, but tracing it all the way back to